Alright, that time we got sound, so cool. So I'm on XP and I want to, oh, I already installed it. So I had you install the newest version of WinSCP. So I'm just gonna do like SCP and tell it to talk to the Ubuntu system and give it the correct credentials, which should be Georgia, and password for SSH. And if I tell it to save and click save password, it does say not recommended, but plenty of people do. So we save that, and if we do a login, we can prove that it works. And a typical way of doing secure copy from Windows and frankly everywhere, because the syntax can be rather hard to remember. Alright, so that just gives us an option. Okay, I just lost my session. That's cool. Windows SMB MS 08067 net API exploit. Alright, cool. So I've got working sessions again. Alright, so I want to take a look at, let's just jump back into that guy. A little bit of like finding data, so you can just do a search. And for instance, like passwords. Like there's password.txt in anonymous, or you could search credit. I should find our credit cards. Yeah. So you can just search for like files, or to be a little bit more precise, there's actually, if we take a look at our post-exploitation modules, we go back to, let's kill this, user share metasploit framework modules, and go into that post modules. And Windows gather. This will help us gather stuff, so there's a whole section for credentials. So different things that store credentials. So we did WinSCP. So I can use post Windows gather credentials. I can't spell credentials. So tab complete is nice. And WinSCP. Since this is a post module, we just need a session. So what session number was this? 7. So set session to 7. We do exploit. Found that saved username and password, so we can use these gather modules to help us gather additional information, including, in this case, we found the login for a whole different system. So depending on what they have installed, that could be potentially useful. And also, we didn't look at this in the previous, but we can, that's not key logger, it's key scan, so we can actually log keystrokes. We're currently, I believe, system, so we may not actually see any of George's key scans. So if we do PS and move into like explore.exe, so basically George's start menu, be more likely to see key scans there. Start up our keylogger, come over to XP and notepad.exe, hi Georgia. Then we do keyscan_dump. And we get everything, including like our Windows R and backspaces and Notepad. And we get our Hi Georgia, so we can do key scan stop. You can also, like if you move into like the Win logon process, you can get specifically login information. So it does depend on what process you're in, what you'll see with the keylogger, but that's certainly easier than building your own keylogger, getting it past antivirus, all of that. Another thing you may notice, if you do the PX, once we're on the system, we may actually find other ways in that we may not have noticed the first time through. It's really hard to find everything, certainly. Like for instance, on this one, we actually have the 3Com TFTP service. When we get to exploit development, we'll see that. We'll use that for exploit development, one of our examples, but it would be very hard to find this as a vulnerability because it doesn't really say, hi, I'm 3Com TFTP or anything like that. So while we did find that port to be either open or filtered, we didn't actually find this, but it actually is an exploitable way in. So I guess if you want to write vulnerable software, put it on UDP and it'll be harder to find. So you may find another way in. And another thing, like if we look at bash history, or of course Windows logs as well. I mean, logs are always good, more of a forensic side there, but I like to check the bash history. Bash_history. So I kind of cheated here and made the first thing in here is my password is password. So sure enough, George's password is password. So rather than having to do local privilege escalation, if we just looked there before doing our UDEV, we could have actually saved ourselves some trouble there. Another thing I like to do, in this case we have the ability to do hash dump, but a lot of times I find myself like with Java Meterpreter where I don't have hash dump, so I come in through like Tomcat or I'm in PHP Meterpreter, in this case where we did our XAMPP. So we got Meterpreter through some sort of web interface, but we don't have like full Meterpreter. So what I like to do is drop into a shell and then just use net commands. So I can do like net user John, password is John, add net local group administrators John, add. So now John is a local admin. If I exit out of here, and I'll just background this, so I can pretend this is like Meterpreter PHP or Meterpreter Java, then I can use Windows SMB PSExec. So this is going to authenticate over SMB with a valid username and password, so then we could get a regular Windows Meterpreter. Also, if you have a valid set of credentials for one system, you could use this to try and get into additional systems that probably have the same credentials. I see the same local admin password like probably on like 70% of the tests I do. So they're just built from the same image, or they just have the same local admin. So once you have credentials on one, you can just basically spin around to all of them. So I do show options, set our host to XP, set SMB user to John, set SMB pass to John, and our SMB domain, and just set, we can leave it as work group. We can also do dot to tell it localhost. If you are working with domains and you want it to just do the localhost, you just do a dot. I'll just let it default on the payload. Login failure. I just made John an admin. So let's try Georgia. Set SMB user Georgia. Set SMB Pass password. Should I not set these up right? I told you to set them up right. Maybe I didn't set them up right. And if I go to control panel and actually it's not in control panel. It's in secpol.msc and I think local policies, security options. Yeah, I didn't set this up right. So I'm basically making XP act as though it's part of a domain. Though we have Windows 7 in a domain. In my example, though, I left that as optional for you. So we made this change in the setup. I told you to anyways. I obviously did not. But now, if we run this, it should work. And sure enough, it does. So basically, it's making XP act like it's part of a domain, so it allows users to log in over SMB. If you're not in a domain, it doesn't do this, but most of your clients will probably be in a domain. Alright, so we were able to get another session, and this would give us like hash dump access. And it does, oddly enough. You would think you'd be logging on as the user, but you actually get system level access out of it. So again, once you have valid administrator, you have to be local admin. Credentials on one system, you can send this to all the other ones, and chances are at least some of them will have the same. So we can also do something that's really cool called pass the hash. So if I just grab the hash here, we actually don't have to crack it in order to use this PSExec. We can use pass the hash. So basically what happens is to avoid sending the password over the network, the SMB server sends us a challenge and we respond to it. And the way this is set up is that just the answer to the challenge is the hash password. Because it is a one-way hash, right? The only way we should have the hash is if we have the original password, right? Well, as we see here, not always the case. So if I copy this and if I set that SMB pass to the hash, oh, I'm in interpreter. Oops. Background. Set SMB pass and paste that in. And now we run it. Will actually still work. Cool, huh? That's called pass the hash and can be very helpful if you can't crack the password. I mean, in this case, it's got LM hash on, so no worries. But if the LM hash was blank, you could do this. If you couldn't get your password cracked. So we can do kind of the same thing with SSH on Linux. You can do SSHexec. I mean, I don't use that as much. I mean, I'm always playing with Windows domains. Another thing we can do is token impersonation. So we can use something called incognito. So if we load incognito, we'll have, if we do a help, we'll have more incognito options. So if we list tokens, let's do -u. Currently just like bulb XP Georgia and then some system ones. But if I log off here and switch users and log on as secret, I know what secret's password is. It's password 123. What is that? Yeah, with a big P. So now if we do this here, so pretend we don't know secret's password. Now we see that secret's logged in. So we can impersonate token. Book XP. It's not book XP. It's bulb XP. Secret with the double backslash. Now I am effectively secret. So if secret was, for instance, a domain admin, we would now be able to behave as a domain admin ourselves. So, I mean, secret doesn't really have any privileges that Georgia doesn't. If you did set up a domain, I'll show you a little bit about working with domains in one of the later videos in this section, but if you didn't, you can see this here. You can impersonate other users that have logged into the system without knowing their credentials. Another option we have is if we load mimicat. The help for this tool is written in French, so it's kind of difficult to figure out how to use it correctly. And now we have our mimicat. So if we just put in Kerberos, not currently running as, oh, right. So if we just do red to self, that puts us back as system. We can actually get plain text passwords of everybody who's logged in. So that'll get us secret and Georgia's password. So it can actually pull the passwords out of memory. So it's one step farther than hash dump. I mean, the users do need to be logged in for this, but we can potentially get plain text passwords. So, I mean, these are some pretty easy passwords to crack, but you could get certainly some much more difficult ones.